Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Finding You podcast. I'm Dr. Brad Reedy. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about perhaps the question I get asked most about the relationship between praise and connection, specifically the phrase that I've often shared or uttered that I don't think telling our children that we are proud of them is a helpful contribution to their esteem, to their well-being. So I'll talk about that amongst all of the issues around praise and connection as we go along tonight. Before I get into that, for our housekeeping items, if you're interested in a deep dive in your own work, if you want to go to a place where it becomes so safe that you're able to talk about things and explore things that in other contexts you didn't have the safety or even the interest in discussing, Finding You intensive therapy programs is that option. Our next offering is May 13th through 17th. We have a couple of spots available. If you're interested, go to our website or email us at info@findingyouprograms.com for inquiries for private intensives, for information about our monthly support group for our alumni. The next one being May 20th, happens on the third Wednesday of each month. You can go to our website or email us at that email address. If you're looking for a coach or a therapist who works in the model that I teach, this attachment-based, analytically informed model, depth psychology, where we're looking at what's underneath the symptoms, what's beneath our behaviors, then we can help connect you with a therapist or a coach that could benefit you and help you work along that process. If you're looking for an escape, an opportunity to do something for yourself, but also you still are interested in some kind of self-help, July 12th through 17th, my daughter Emma and I will be at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, at the Hudson Valley in New York, teaching our class, reteaching our class, our second iteration of our workshop on the audacity to be you, learn to love your horrible, rotten self. So we did it last fall. We loved it. We signed back up on Monday when they reached out to us because we found it to be so successful and invigorating. It's only $500 a month after you find lodging. You can get an Airbnb or you can stay on campus there. But for 5 days of curriculum, 5 days of lecturing, experiential activities, group activities, it's a wonderful opportunity to move your work along. We will also be at the Art of Living Retreat Center in North Carolina in teaching that same class, September 27th through October 2nd. Same format, just about the same price. So if you're interested, if maybe doing an intensive right now feels overwhelming for you and you want something that's kind of in between lecturing and that therapeutic experience, that this workshop can be right for you. The Art of Living Retreat Center, you can go to artoflivingretreatcenter.org or eomega.org to sign up for those. With that, let's get into tonight's curriculum. I wanted to share this preamble, something I heard Rich Roll say on my social media. I thought it was a good place to start because on a conscious level, I think a lot of people have opinions about praise and even experience with praise, either end of praise, either the receiver or the giver. And I think at times when we don't account for the conscious material, the energy beneath what we say and what we do, we miss the opportunity to understand what's really going on and what's really impacting us. So it does take that deep dive into our work, that deep therapeutic exploration into our history, our issues. So I want to share this quote from Rich Roll. He said, "For people who think that therapy is indulgent, it's really this incredible act of service for the people you care about most. Because trauma unhealed spills out in toxic ways and affects everybody that you care about most. It basically is like this infection that colors and characterizes all of your behaviors and your perspective. And you can't really overstate the profundity of the whole thing. So if you think it's like, I got this over here, it's cool, don't worry about it, I got it under control, you're not really dealing in reality because it is spilling out and affecting people in ways that you probably have no concept of. It really is the greatest gift that you can give to your children because you are not only helping yourself, you're interrupting this pattern and you're sparing them of what you had to survive. So before we get to the content, there's a hope, an invitation to consider what might be unconscious in our lives. With praise, like a lot of topics that I teach about, because we have so much experience with it, we're intelligent people, we're problem-solving people, we're people who seek to do well to the people that we love. We can fall under the assumption that we think we've got it figured out. Going even deeper, I remember when I was considering my first participation over 16 years ago at a therapeutic intensive, I had an understanding of my work. I had the experience of having explored it in psychotherapy with a person that I can still consider, who is still my therapist, that I consider to be one of the greatest therapists ever, and had an intellectual understanding of the way that my history, my parents, their divorce, my father's absence, the way that it affected me in my life. I could have written a paper. In fact, probably did write a paper before I went to the intensive. But the intensive was something deeper. It was my own emotional contact with this world. It was the lived experience, the kind of felt experience of how my childhood, how my history was affecting me. So like Rich Roll says, if you think that psychotherapy is indulgent, if you think that navel gazing, as some people call it, is a waste of time, it really is the best way that I know to show the people that you love them. And you can convince yourself on a conscious level that you've got it all under control. And by many indicators, you might be managing your life very well. Most people are that I deal with at some level, unless they're in acute crisis. But like Rich says, if that's where you think it is, that you've got it under control, the fact of the matter is you're not dealing in reality. So we go into places that scare us. We go into rooms that make us nervous. We go and sit with other people, sit with a therapist, and that feels uncomfortable. It feels at some level, I think, that what has happened before will happen again. That somehow we'll leave feeling less than, or that we're at fault and that we're complaining about things and we have so much privilege that our life isn't that bad. That's what we convince ourselves, because really those are the echoes of the voices of the big people who raised us. Because our distress was so uncomfortable for the people that loved us, because they didn't have this ability to sit with us and be present with us. Therefore, we learn to not know ourselves, right? If you get seen, you know yourself. If you don't get seen, you don't know yourself. So we convince ourselves that everything is under control, but there is something deeper. There is something more. The best method for understanding your trauma may be as simple as watching your reactions. I think a lot of people think that the way to do this work is you go back and you say, tell me about your mother, tell me about your childhood, describe what it was like. And while that might work in some circumstances, some situations with some people, that's not really the path that the discovery of our trauma and our healing takes, in my experience. It starts off with, how did it go today? How was your work meeting? Did you have a fight with your spouse? Did you have a difficult conversation with a child? Did somebody trigger you while you're driving to work today? Because it's those reactions, those circumstances that point back to our trauma, to the parts of us that we have avoided up to this point. So the best method for understanding your trauma may be as simple as watching your reactions to everyday events, your triggers, the buttons that get pushed, your sense of humiliation. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Where you stumble, there is your work. So your trauma is revealed in your reactions to circumstances, situations, people, conversations, instances in your life. When you become dysregulated, when your response, when seen through objective eyes, seems disproportionate to the events. When you have a repeated pattern of triggers, you start to piece together the commonality in these triggers. For example, in situations where you didn't feel seen or heard or listened to, where people underestimate you or don't respond to your needs or imagine your feelings and your thoughts to be something other than what they are. When you have a series of experiences in day-to-day life where you're triggered in those moments, that can tell you, teach you, show you where your trauma is. And in this example that I've given, It would be found in examples in childhood where you weren't seen, where you weren't understood, where you weren't resonated with. So when we think about the work, it could be as simple as talking about our day. I posted this post. This really is the thing that got me interested in talking about this evening. From my new book, my co-authored book, Stay in the Room, I wrote this. One parenting error that we often make is conflating praise with love. Praise is valuable, but it is not a substitute for attunement and connection. We want our children to know that all of them is worthy. And when I posted this, somebody sent me a private message that said something like this. They wrote to me and said, I was at a parenting seminar recently. The facilitator talked about how parents are afraid of giving praise and commendation to their children because they don't want the child to have a big head. Among other things, he said, don't worry about a big head, give them a big heart. And the person added, that really hit me. Praise our children generously for what they do. So I thought about this, and this was just one of many private messages or comments that I get, and I thought, I want to respond to this. And as I started to think about my response, I thought there was a way to talk about this tonight on one of these broadcasts in a systematic way. And I'll say the first thing, a big head, and I can't overstate this. A big head is not the result of too much praise. It's really the result of not really being seen or heard, believing that the things that we do in the world, the praiseworthy things we do are the things that make us worthy of connection, of love, give us our value. A big head is a defense against low self-esteem. That needs to be clear for us. Arrogance always covers up insecurity. Arrogance is the defense against this fear, this nameless dread that we have no value, or that our value is only in what we can provide to others, what we can make or do, or how much money, or what we look like. A big head is not the result of somebody being attuned to us and encouraging us with affirmative language. That's not what it is. But it does come when that's all we're valued for. When the things when the missteps, when the mistakes, when the failures, when the setbacks, when our idiocies are reacted to with disdain or disgust or fear, just fear. A parent's fearful response to the child most often results in the child having a sense that something's not right in them. The child experiences it as something's not right in them. And many parents even call their fear, their expressed fear to their children, worried about their children's life and how they'll be, their safety. Parents experience it as care. So not only do they not own their anxiety and have it come out unconsciously, but sometimes they package it up and tie it in a bow and give it to the child, hoping that their fear will cause the child to be afraid and to take the path in the right direction. Our children don't need correction as much as they need connection and containment. And human beings experience this kind of positive attention that is praise as love. They see the parents or the grandparents, the big people, light up when they succeed. And the child has the experience, that's what I need to be. They see their parents conversely react to mistakes or setbacks or failures with anxiety, with frustration, with exhaustion. And the child experiences that as something's wrong with me. I must hide these parts of myself. So they don't know how to be accountable. They don't know how to say, I'm sorry. They become defensive. And the defense for all of us, in fact, virtually all defenses stem from this narcissistic wound, this wound of being seen as we are, being valued for who we are, being understood and attuned to. The narcissistic wound, something that we all have to a greater or lesser extent, is the experience that we are loved for what we do or what we say or what we produce, how we look. Something superficial, something objective, right? To become an object, that is. From The Drama of the Gifted Child, Dr. Alice Miller writes, without therapy, and this might be the premise of the entire book, the thesis of the entire book. Without therapy, she writes, it is impossible for the grandiose person to cut the tragic link between admiration and love. I really worry about how much people talk so negatively, so angry about narcissism, so judgmentally, so disgusted by the grandiose narcissist. When I see people write and talk and teach with that tone toward narcissists, there's only one thing that becomes apparent to me, is that they don't know about their own narcissism. Because if they did, and they have some, we all do, they would understand that the narcissist is the most terrified of all. They're terrifying of being left, of being cast out, of being rejected, of being alone. And while their defense might be very hurtful, which includes gaslighting, insults, cruelties, unkindness, and so forth and so on, no doubt all of those behaviors, all of those ways that it presents, cause a great deal of pain to the people around them and the world at large. The individual who's suffering with the narcissistic presentation is terrified. They are wounded. They are the alienated, scared child who feels unloved. Hence the defense about needing to be right and good all the time. I read this quote all the time, but I'm going to add to it from The Drama of the Gifted Child. Alice Miller says, experience has taught us that we have only one enduring weapon in our struggle against mental illness: the emotional discovery of the truth about the unique history of our childhood. And then she goes on to say, we must try in a long process to discover our own personal touch, a truth that may cause pain before giving us a new sphere of freedom. If we choose instead to content ourselves with intellectual wisdom, we will remain in the sphere of illusion and self-deception. And then she goes on to say, most people do exactly the opposite, without realizing that the past is constantly determining their present actions. They avoid learning anything about their history. To add to this confusion, this misstep that people take, it is reinforced by the self-help, the pop psychology community, and of course, many therapists. This is not about doing something different. This is about transforming and becoming something different. Fundamentally, what it's about is about becoming who you were supposed to be in the first place, before the world told you who to be. Before the reactions of the big people led you to the conclusion that you had to be something to be loved, to be cared about, to be worthy, to stay connected. Most people don't look at their history. Most people want to go to problem solving. Most people want a workaround, a hack, some kind of way to avoid what is in them. But like it says in one of the apocryphal Dead Sea Scrolls, if we bring forth what is within us, what is within us will save us. If we do not bring forth what is within us, what is within us will destroy us. It's not so important what you want to be, what you hope to be, how you would like to see yourself. It's not important for you to know what you should be or what the world tells you you should do or should be. All of those are a defense against who you really are. We've got to come to terms with this person. That's why the analysts say that it is a series of small, sometimes large, humiliations that reveal the authentic self. Because we get confronted with the reality that who we think we are is not true. And the more resistant we are to seeing ourselves, the larger the humiliation, which is why I would rather have small humiliations, and not even to avoid them, not to avoid them, but rather as a catalyst for me understanding myself, coming to terms with who I am. Dr. Miller writes in The Drama of the Gifted Child that many people struggle all of their lives from this oppressive feeling of guilt, the sense of not having lived up to their parents' expectations. This feeling is stronger than any intellectual insight they may have, that it is not a child's task or duty to satisfy the parents' needs. No argument can overcome these guilt feelings, for they have their beginning in life's earliest period. And from that, they derive their intensity and obduracy, which is intractable or hardened. They can be resolved only slowly with the help of a revealing therapy. I've said this in recent broadcasts, that the barrier to therapy, in my estimation, that gets in the way for most people is its pace. It is slower. It takes some time. And sometimes it's only in looking back that we see how much we've grown. Or maybe when we're presented with an old situation where we would have reacted differently. But you know what I'm realizing now, the older I get, is that no matter how much I think I have it figured out today, and that includes me right this moment, there's going to be some humiliation going forward. There's going to be some circumstance, situation, choice that I make, mess that I make, that will expose to me a part of myself that I haven't been honest with myself about. So really what we're talking about tonight, in a lot of ways, underneath this idea of praise and connection, is this narcissistic wound. I wrote once, it's not that the child is overvalued, where they get that big head, that narcissism. It's being valued for the wrong thing and in the wrong way. Every defense that we all have has a connection to our narcissistic wound. That the idea, that the lesson that we were taught, that we needed to be good, that we couldn't be bad, that it wasn't okay. So next time you find yourself being defensive, or notice somebody that you love being defensive, and by the way, there's no great gift in pointing that out to people when they're defensive. If somebody's defensive, they're already feeling threatened and scared, and so pointing out the defense only enlarges it, only provokes it more. When we recognize or see the defense come up in us or somebody we love, the narcissistic wound is right there, tied to this idea that we have to be good. So if we have the unfortunate opportunity, invitation to go into a 12-step program because somebody that we love is struggling with addiction or severe mental health issues, so we go to CODA or Codependence Anonymous or Al-Anon or some other such type meeting that is for the family members of the identified patient, we'll see this slogan somewhere at some time early in our process. What other people think about you is none of your business. What other people think about you is none of your business. This includes your parents. Ideally, your parents were on board with this. What they think about you is not necessarily about them. Now, if you're as old as I am, you have some perspective, most likely, that offers some insight into that. Most people who have worked on themselves and get to the age of 58, like myself, have a decent sense that their parents were limited, like all parents are, and that we've learned some things since then. And that trying to live up to their expectations and their ideas is not the thing that's going to bring us joy and happiness and freedom. Freud called the outcome of successful therapy freedom from unconscious obligations, the shoulds, the guilts, the expectations that we carry in our bodies. And like a lot of parents, when I was a young parent, I told my children when I was proud of them, I told them when I was disappointed. I told them when I was happy, when I was sad, when I was frustrated, when I was excited by their behavior. And I really did think, and this is where the wound gets in. This is where praise becomes the problem. I really did believe that my reaction to them was important, essential information for them to figure out the right way to go in life, the right way to live. And then they got to a certain age where they were interacting as much with their peers as they were the family. And I saw, as all of us see, this vulnerability to peer pressure. This worrying about what others see and think and feel about them. And then if you're like me, most parents that I know wonder, where did this come from? Where did this insecurity come from? Where did this dependence on what other people think about come from? And the answer to the question is, it came from us, the parents. We were the first ones to suggest to them at a conscious or at least an unconscious level that what others think and feel about them, i.e. us, the parents, is about them. And I don't feel the same way I did when my children were younger. My oldest being 33 now. I don't even think my opinion about how they're living their life, the direction that they're going, is all that important. I don't just not pay a lot of attention to it and form an opinion around it. I don't even think that it matters. I don't even think that I have a sense of it. My job is, I get to be a witness. I get to be with them in their life as they sort it out. So we spend our young lives trying to please our parents, make them proud, make them happy about what we're doing, not cause them fear and upset and worry, anxiety, anger, frustration, disappointment. And then we realize that that wasn't the cure. That was the problem. That was the poison altogether. And then we spend the rest of our lives trying to unlearn that. But it's difficult because it goes against our wiring. From his book, The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz says, and speaking of the second agreement, he says, don't take anything personally. That's the second agreement, these new ways of thinking. And he writes, even when a situation seems so personal, even if others insult you directly, it has nothing to do with you. What they say, what they do, and the opinions they give are according to the agreements they have in their own minds. It's not important to me what you think about me, and I don't take what you think personally. I don't take it personally when people say, Miguel, you're the best. And I also don't take it personally when they say, Miguel, you are the worst. One of my favorite shows to watch with my daughter, my youngest, is Rick and Morty. Most of you probably haven't seen it, or if you've tried to watch it, you're disgusted by it. But I learned to fall in love with it. This might be a little bit more difficult for those that aren't looking at my screen because I have an image of this quote on here. So I'll have to kind of spell it out because it's a word that might sound like another word. There's a quote where Rick, the grandfather, says to the grandson, your booze, meaning B-O-O', your booze, like booing, the opposite of cheering. Your boos mean nothing to me, he said. I've seen what makes you cheer. So part of it is we don't swallow whole the values of others, of our parents. Hopefully we develop a more sophisticated, more evolved sense of things than our parents had. Isn't that the goal for each generation, to kind of move a little bit farther? Isn't that one of your goals as a parent, to help your child steer clear of some of the mistakes, some of the idiocies that you were subject to as a child? And the hope is that with a little bit of a head start that they'll go even farther than you. And if they do that, then they'll pass that on along to their children and so forth and so on. This idea from Rick and Morty is very similar to the Georgia O'Keeffe, the renowned artist. The quote of hers that I often share with you folks, she said, I have already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free. So our praise isn't really that important. It's our connection. It's our attunement. It's our resonance. Starting first with ourselves. we've got to come to terms with the parts of ourselves that we have neglected, the parts of ourselves we've avoided, the parts of ourselves that we have shoved into the shadow, into the unconscious, that we've split off from us. We've got to come to terms with that stuff. And the more connected you get to your whole self, the easier it is to sit with somebody else, to sit with them and to be present with them. Now, how does one learn to grapple with and reclaim these parts of themselves that they have jettisoned as an adaptation to feel safe as a child? How do we help them to reintegrate those parts of themselves? We sit with them. We listen. We don't offer lots of suggestions and advice. We empathize. We understand. We resonate. We relate. And from that, they start to feel safe and okay and not crazy. Not something that we need to be afraid of or upset by. They learn to sit with themselves. So in the same way that we learn to shove those parts of ourselves that are unacceptable into the unconscious, the same process that causes that, which is relationships with the big people, the therapist, the mentor, the sponsor, becomes this kind of parental surrogate. This person who can sit with us, be present with us, not scream or gasp, not get upset or angry, but just sit with us and understand us. Like my daughter says to her clients, no matter what we discover, no matter how far we look inside of you, in all the dark corners, everything we find will be human, no matter what. Because that's all you are, is human. You are nothing else but human. But if the goal is to be good, if that's the goal that you have taken from the message that you were given, the goal is to be good, you will never know yourself. Because you are so much more than the good. You're the bad and everything in between. You are selfish and generous. You are scared and courageous. You are loving and hateful. You're all of it. And the more you take back those parts that we think of as negative, they give the gift that is associated with them. You take that hate and you own it, and you realize that that's part of your anger. That's your instinct to protect yourself from people that would abuse you. For example, I remember when I was in my 20s, maybe my teens, I was reading the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And in the preface, he says, I can only speak to what I know. For example, he says, I can't talk about gambling because I have no experience with gambling. Neither do I, he explains, have any experience with the virtue of which gambling is in excess. So I can't talk to you about gambling or its positive virtue that's connected. Our wounds and our deficits are side by sides. Our wounds and our gifts always are connected, always side by side. One of the things we see in stories is the protagonist is punished for or alienated for a certain trait that they have. But later in the story, that same trait, when reintegrated and evolves just a little bit, becomes the thing that saves the story. So for us to really develop mental health and resiliency and a sense of well-being, all of us has to be seen. All of us needs to be understood. All of us needs to be accepted as human. And it won't lead to more negative behavior. It won't lead to lawlessness and hedonism. Everybody fears that. That's what we've been told. We have to hate the sin and love the sinner, we're told. That's how we've been taught to kind of manage ourselves. But we learn that hatred cannot root out hatred. Only love can do that. Only compassion, only non-judgment. But that terrifies us because of our upbringing. So this phrase, "I'm proud of you," that I have long said is not something I almost ever say. First of all, intuitively, it just doesn't sit right with me. It's a strange phrasing. "I'm proud of you." What does that mean? We don't say, "I'm happy of you. I'm excited of you. I'm joyful of you. I'm proud of you." What does that mean? It seems to mean to me that when I see you do something well or fantastic in the world, I'm proud to be associated with you, to be your father, to be your friend, to be your spouse, to have some connection to you. But anytime we say something like that, unconsciously the person is aware of its opposite, which is, I can also be ashamed of you, embarrassed to be your father or your friend or your spouse or associated with you. So the minute we start tying such a big weight to somebody as "I'm proud of you," we introduce a kind of tenuous connection. "I'm proud of you" seems to me to be more about the person and their own esteem, the person saying it, than it does about the individual that it's directed at. Phrases like "you can be proud of yourself," much different. But "I'm proud of you" weighs very heavily. I think unconsciously, my particular style of dealing with childhood challenges as a child was rebellion. I was so uninterested in kind of carrying the pressure of making my parents proud that I sank my own ship over and over again. And it wasn't self-sabotage. To me, it was cutting the strings, the invisible chain that I felt connected and responsible for their egos. So I dropped out of high school. I failed. I broke the law. And really what I was looking for was freedom from the unconscious obligations that I carried. The expectations that my worth in life would be tied to how well I did at a certain subject or in my profession or in a race, etc., etc. "I'm proud of you," to me, sounds like you're a reflection of me. I could be ashamed of you. You're making me proud, as if you're responsible for my feelings. It means I could be embarrassed by you. It might mean I want to be seen as your parent or your friend or associated with you. "I'm proud of you" means you're responsible for my feelings. It begs the question, what happens when you fail? How will I feel then? It means that my identity is outsourced and relied on you. So where it was originally resting on what my parents thought, my identity was tied to their feelings and thoughts. Now it becomes the child who carries that. Unless I take up what is my chief responsibility and make me feeling good about me my responsibility. "I'm proud of you" suggests that what others think about you is about you, and it's not. What others think about you may coincidentally be about you, but fundamentally it's about them. One of my first professors in graduate school said to me, "What you tell me about the devil and how you feel about the devil tells me much more about you than it does about the devil." People can only see you through their lens, from their consciousness. And the people that I respect in this field, in this area, they don't have a lot of opinions about other people. They don't have judgments, not because they're subscribing to some kind of technique, because it doesn't make sense eventually anymore. Praising children to make them feel better about themselves really doesn't work. This trying to make a child feel good about themselves by praising them stems from parental anxiety. And it is the unowned parental anxiety, unconscious anxiety of the parent that enters the child's body and nervous system and gives the child a sense of dis-ease. The child's body interprets parental anxiety as something is wrong with them. Self-esteem, on the other hand, is based on seeing the child. And this requires you to see yourself and know yourself first. Because if you haven't made peace with those parts of yourself, you will not tolerate them in others. In fact, most likely you'll only see them in others. And you'll feel very self-righteous in your disgust of those lesser people. As Jung said, the best way to understand somebody's darkness is to know your own. Until you've got a sense of the landscape of your inner workings and who you are, your reactions to other people will be largely unconscious. Resiliency doesn't result from knowing about your strengths and gifts. If it did, all the beautiful, praised, talented, rewarded people would feel good about themselves, and we know that's not true. We see that all the time. While knowing your gifts can give you some confidence, real esteem, self-esteem, comes from knowing and seeing all of our parts. Making friends, in a manner of speaking, with our weaknesses, our broken parts, our adaptations, the things that we had to do to survive. But this looking at all of us and embracing all of us is often avoided because it is so painful, terrifying, and unpleasant for most people. This path is often avoided until some crisis occurred and it is the only option we haven't yet tried. In the book Nurture Shock, they talk about healthy praise. And they explain that when we praise something like somebody's giftedness or specialness or potential, it ruins them. From Nurture Shock, we read, sure, he's special, but new research suggests that if you tell him that, you'll ruin him. It's a neurobiological fact. The research is exhaustive and clear, and essentially unchallenged, because nobody can find examples where it doesn't apply. You praise somebody's potential, and the only outcome available to them is to meet it. That praise that they get for being special or gifted or exceptional is at risk if they try. So we learn to praise something that they can control, which is effort, working hard, sticking to it. From Nurture Shock again, we read, Thomas, citing a specific case example, didn't want to try things he wouldn't be successful at. His father reports, some things came very quickly to him, but when they didn't, he gave up almost immediately, concluding, I'm not good at this. With no more than a glance, Thomas was dividing the world into two things, things he was naturally good at and things he wasn't. The greatest gift that we could give our children would be to try things that they're bad at. So if we praise them for sticking through hard things, they're more likely to try hard things, they're less likely to cheat, and they're more likely to stick to the task longer. If we praise our children for their giftedness or their successes, even their successes, if we praise our children for their successes, they're more likely to quit, to cheat, and to try easy things. Because again, they want to cling to that glimmer, that light, that praise, that love that they feel when they get praised. So we've got to change in so many ways, so many fundamental ideas from the common culture. What I'm citing now around praise comes from the growth mindset. Some of you might know about it. It is the idea about how human beings, Homo sapiens, develop. And basically what we learned starting with math, and now it's expanded to other subjects and even pro-social, healthy behaviors, that if we give praise to children for being smart, for being kind, for being good, they're more likely to lie, cheat, and quit. 90% of the people in those early tests, 90% of the effort praised children chose a more challenging test, while less than 50% of the children praised for being smart chose a more challenging test. And these results were replicated over and over and over again. And like I said, expanded into other subjects. Emphasizing, Nurture Shock says, emphasizing effort gives a child a variable that they can control. They come to see themselves as in control of their success. Emphasizing natural intelligence takes it out of the child's control, and it provides no good recipe for responding to failure. So praise is nuanced. I'm proud of you is nuanced. It's something to be more conscious around and about. Having a big head is not feeling overly confident. It's feeling terrified. A superiority complex always is a cover for an inferiority complex. A grandiose narcissist is absolutely terrified of being discovered as ordinary, as human, because they were told that that was not good enough to earn love. And it was reinforced in thousands, if not millions and billions of invisible exchanges between them and the big people around them growing up. Praise effort rather than potential or giftedness or successful outcomes. Praise that comes from parental anxiety. I tell this story about a child who was very, very sensitive young man. Had some suicidal ideation, depressed, obviously anxious, low self-esteem. You can imagine this just sensitive person. And after the first letter that his parents wrote that told him why he was in our program, the following week, one of the parents, the father, wrote a letter, and the letter was 25 reasons why I love you. So that second week, I hand this letter to the young man and he reads it. And I could feel the anxiety. I could feel the father trying to make his son feel good about himself. The father was afraid, of course, of his son's poor self-esteem that was manifesting in suicidal ideation. And he wanted to inject into his son a feeling of self-love and self-confidence. So I asked the young man after he read the letter, what do you think? And he said, nonchalant, somewhat neutral and disinterested. He said, it's fine, it's okay, it's good. So I entered an idea to him. I said, it makes me, when I read that, when I hear you read that, it sounds very anxious to me. It sounds like they're anxious about how you feel and they want you to feel a certain way. And the boy relaxed. He set the letter down. He took a big sigh and he said, that's what it feels like. And then I went back and told the father that a few days later, and without even finishing the story that illustrated it, he said, absolutely, it was my anxiety. So you see, it doesn't matter what you say. That's why communication skills have their limits. That's why what you say has its limits. It doesn't matter what you say, it's who you are. And if you don't tune into that, you could couch things in language that sounds perfectly appropriate. On paper, nobody would have a critique of it. But if it comes from an anxious place, that's what gets communicated. And if the parent is anxious and it's not owned, it's not named, and the parent doesn't own it as theirs, but just it's free floating out there, like in this letter, the child will feel like something's wrong with them. So ironically, this letter that was intended to control and fix the child's self-esteem issue actually contributed to it. So the person who wrote to me and said we should praise our children liberally, my response was, it's nuanced. It's more complicated than that. It depends on how and what they're praising. It depends on how much anxiety and what they're what the goal is. For the child, praise becomes a measure of their worth. So we learn to value failure. We learn to be okay with failure and mistakes. We learn to not overreact because we start to predict how this particular mistake or this particular theme or issue is going to be something that's going to ruin their life going forward. They're never going to get into college. Parental fear and anxiety, free floating, are the greatest burden for a child to carry. That is why us scared parents, us anxious parents, have to do our work to own our anxiety. It's mine. It's yours. It's not theirs. So we learn to sit with failure. We learn to relax around it. We learn to know that it's an important teacher. And we learn to take care of our fears and our anxiety with our therapists. so that when we're parenting our children or talking to others in our life that we love, that are close to us, we're not unconsciously handing our feelings to them, making them responsible for how we feel. And we learn to model failure. One of the best things you can do is model healthy failure to your children. Admit your mistakes, be accountable, own it. And again, parents who come from another paradigm are afraid to do that because they're afraid that they're going to lose their authority. But that idea is part of the problem. The goal here is to become an authentic self, not a good self. A good self is just a thin slice of a person. An authentic self is who you are. And like my daughter says, no matter what it looks like, it's human. So we can say things like, nice job, good work. We can tell our children, you can be proud of that effort. Keep going. Congratulations, well done. But we learn not to go over the top, because over the top, that's our anxiety. And while the words might seem really positive and upbeat, it feels to the child like something is just not right, not settled. So your job, my job, is to go do our work. Because that is the foundation upon which all of this rests. I don't have a directive that says, don't say I'm proud of you or don't praise children. That's not my point or intention ever. My intention is it's more complicated than that. The behavior, to reduce the exchange of praise to simply the behavior, misses most of it. There is more at play than that. So the take home, we learn to value the whole self, but to do that, we start with somebody who can find and value our whole self. Not just our pretty, smart, talented, and successful parts, but our horrible, rotten self parts. Or at least the parts that we were told or taught, whether were unconsciously suggested to us, were unacceptable. And we realize as we become safe in our own bodies, heal our own trauma, we start to realize that the highs aren't really that high and the lows aren't really that low. It's all in part of a beautiful fabric that we call the human life. But we have to figure out our relationship with fear and anxiety. If we want to be a helpful part of this process with the people we love, we have to understand our relationship with fear and anxiety. And if we don't know how scared we are, we will act it out on people around us. Just like that quote from Rich Roll at the beginning of this tonight. It will spill out unconsciously, toxically, on the people that we care about most. Your anxiety can look like anger. In men, it often looks like anger, frustration, agitation, impatience, intensity. The more classic presentation is hand-wringing, worrying, gasping. As I always say, if you tell somebody something and they gasp with that big deep breath, the first thing that you know is that they're not safe. The first instinct that you'll have is you've got to take care of them. So you're only going to tell a part of the story that they can tolerate. And over time, if that happens enough, you only see part of the story because that's all you can tolerate. Trying to make somebody feel good about themselves doesn't quite work. It's like aiming a throw. It doesn't work that way. See, there's a big difference between loving somebody and trying to make somebody feel loved. There's a big difference between loving somebody and trying to make them feel loved. And it's important that we understand the difference between those. It's a difference between telling the truth and trying to manage what somebody thinks about you. We learn to go back to ourselves, to have the courage to become who we are, in spite of all the things and all the messages in the world that tell us who we should be. we come to realize that the barrier, the defense against the bigger life, the larger life that we all want, is who we have become up to this point to survive. Who we are is the issue. We learn to praise when we do praise. We learn to praise effort and to sit patiently, compassionately, non-judgmentally, non-reactively to mistakes and failures. When we find ourselves reacting in extreme ways, positively or negatively, to our children's behaviors, we have some sense, some indication of the narcissistic wound waiting in us, unaddressed in us. And then lastly, we just keep going. Keep going. No matter how aware and conscious and evolved I am today, a year or two from now, I'm going to think a couple of different thoughts or two, a few different things. I'm going to unlearn something that today I'm so sure of. So we don't look to avoid humiliation. We look to see the gift in it. Because the humiliation is that little part of our ego dying. And if we don't allow those small humiliations, it'll come in a big crash, a big explosion, a big event. All right, folks. If you're not a member of the Inner Circle, reach out to us. Email us at info@findingyouprograms.com so you can attend these live and get access to a couple of different hours that aren't available to the public per month. If you would like to learn more about what I have to say, my 3 books, The Journey of the Heroic Parent, The Audacity to Be You, and Stay in the Room, are available wherever books are sold. If you would like to attend a workshop that can help you learn to love your horrible, rotten self and thus become a much more effective facilitator of helping the people that you love get to where they need to go, July 12th through 17th, Emma and I will be in Rhinebeck, New York at the Omega Institute. Excuse me. That's eomega.org. Or we'll be at the Art of Living Retreat Center in North Carolina, September 27th through October 2nd, teaching in that same class. If you want the most effective process I've ever been a part of to help with this, the Finding You Intensive is that offering. May 13th through 17th, that'll be run by Dr. Jordan June, a clinical psychologist who's well-versed in this stuff, along with Ivy Marsh, a new therapist and coach that we've taken on who also is an expert in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. For all other inquiries and private intensives, you can email us or go to our website. For the support group on May 20th, email us or go to our portal to get the link and to register. If you're looking for a coach or a therapist, you can email us or go to our portal. My next broadcast will be the Inner Child Work podcast, May 5th, next Tuesday. So Inner Child Work on May 5th. And part of that, I've done that before, but part of it is in response to an article written recently that somebody shared with me where somebody was criticizing the inner child work. So I'm going to debunk that nonsense on May 5th, and I look forward to that. All right, folks, thank you for joining me. I hope this was a helpful point of contact. As always, for and on behalf of the people that you love and the people that love you, thanks for showing up and listening and doing these, because your change makes all the difference in the world. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.